What I did want to talk about, though, in larger frame, this third hour of the program, is this memo that John Eastman wrote. John Eastman is a constitutional law scholar, is how he presents himself. He, for quite some time, I mean, he was a top legal advisor to Donald Trump, but before that, he was taken very seriously. Federalist Society, all this kind of stuff. He's a big shot right-wing lawyer. And it turns out that in the weeks before before Trump incited the January 6th riot, the attempted coup, that Eastman laid out in a memo what you and I were talking about on this program almost 2 years ago. And I wrote a couple of op-eds about this. You can find them over on, I think the largest and most comprehensive was published mostly on Alternet and Salon.com. This is before I was doing Hartmann Report. And what I pointed out was in the election of 1876, Sam Tilden won the majority of the popular vote and won the majority of the electoral vote. But he didn't end up president. Rutherford Hayes ended up president. Sam Tilden, the Democrat, even though he won both the Electoral College vote and the popular vote, ended up not winning the White House. And the reason why, in part, was because you had 4 states where the election was being contested, where there were 2 slates of electors being sent to Washington, D.C. One, the official slate from the state, and this was 3 southern states and Oregon. Oregon was occupied by the Klan at the time, seriously. And the 3 southern states were occupied by the Union Army in 1876. And so these 4 states all sent both a Tilden slate of Electoral College people, the electors, to Washington, D.C., and a Hayes slate. And so what happened was the vice president was unable to say, hey, I'm certifying the election, and it got thrown into the House of Representatives. And in the House of Representatives, each state has 1 vote. And so this was John Eastman, and I laid this out 2 years ago in an op-ed, actually in several op-eds that I wrote, and I talked about it at length on this program. In fact, I remember we had Ro Khanna on the program one day, Congressman Ro Khanna, and I laid this out for him, and I said, what do you think? And he's like, well, that's a novel theory. I don't think anybody really even knew about this 2 years ago, but John Eastman did. And I don't think he learned it from reading my piece. This is just part of our history. That if states send competing slates of electors, then it really is up to the House of Representatives to decide who won the election. And there are 26 states out of 50 that are controlled entirely by Republicans that would send Donald Trump slates. And so Eastman laid out in this memo, this step-by-step memo, he said the key to the scheme is the creation of competing slates of electors in Georgia and 6 other so-called disputed states. Doesn't matter if there's actually a dispute. He just wanted them to send them. He said a majority of the electors appointed, he said, first of all, he said that Pence would unilaterally announce to the joint session of Congress on January 6th that, quote, because of the ongoing disputes in the 7 states, there are no electors that can be deemed validly appointed from those states. This is what happened with those 4 states in 1876. This would reduce the total number of available electoral votes from 535 to 454. At that point, there are 232 votes for Trump and 222 votes for Biden. Pence then gavels and says Trump is reelected. Just take those states off the board. Plan B is what I just described a minute ago, which is to get competing slates of electors. And he says, and again, in his memo, Republicans currently controls 26 of the state delegations. The bare majority needed to win that vote. President Trump is reelected there as well. By the way, this memo came out last week. And not one major news source, Brian Stelter pointed this out on Sunday on his program about the media, On the Media, I think it's called. CBS didn't report on it, NBC didn't report on it, ABC didn't report on it. It was, there were articles about it in the Times and the Washington Post, but they were not screaming front page headlines. And then, of course, they had a plan C and a plan D. Plan D, by the way, was the attack on January 6th. Just shut it all down and let Sam Alito sort it out in the Supreme Court, which is why Trump and Giuliani were calling these Republican senators. So why doesn't every American know that there was actually a plot in the White House that was written down by this Federalist Society lawyer who was a senior advisor to Donald Trump, John Eastman, that they actually tried to execute, that would have ended democracy in the United States and turned Donald Trump into a dictator for life? Why is this not common knowledge? There was actually down in Georgia, the chairman of the Georgia GOP, David Schaefer, on December 14th, had a meeting of Republicans in Georgia, and they came up with their own slate of electors that they were going to send to Washington, D.C. as part of this plan that Eastman had put together. We don't know about any other states because I don't think it's been well investigated, but we know that this happened in Georgia. Georgia tried. Now, he got shot down by Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, who did the right thing. That's why Trump is trying to replace him right now with, Jody Hice, I think his name is, the right-wing congressman from Georgia who is a Trump humper. But Georgia actually had two slates of electors ready to go if their Secretary of State would have just gone along with it. The Republican Party had their own slate. Was that also true in Wisconsin? We don't know. Was that also true in Arizona? We don't know. Was it true in any of the others, so-called Pennsylvania? We don't know. But right now, what they're trying to do and what they are doing, they've changed the election laws in 20 states so far. What they're trying to do is pull this off again in 2024, whether it's Trump who's running for president or whether it's a Trump smarter than Trump, slicker than Trump, probably more ruthless than Trump, not quite as damaged goods as Trump, Republican candidate, somebody like Rick Scott from Florida, who is very bilingual, very rich. His company committed the largest Medicare fraud in the history of America. He made a pile of money. Nobody's talking a lot about Rick Scott, but I'm telling you, look out for Skeletor here. He's coming. Or Ron DeSantis, or Josh Hall, or Tom Cotton this morning. He thought he could make some points by trying to attack General Milley on TV. But these guys are getting ready for when they lose the 2024 election, taking power anyway. They've got their plan. It almost worked with Trump. It literally almost worked. There were about 4 people that you can identify: an elections official in Michigan, the Secretary of State in Georgia, the Secretary of State in Arizona. There's a handful of people that you can say, if those people had been Trump holes, Trump would be president right now and America would no longer be America. And that's what get ready. This is coming.